Hello, we'll have a look at this short game. It is more of an opening battle, kind of a theoretical battle, which ended kind of in Black's favor, though he did get outplayed for a few moves. And on move 22, the game ended. I assume it was a draw. So let's have a look. So it started as this Scotch Gambit, d5, the right move, bishop b5. And here Black has basically two moves. Knight e4 is historically the main move. Knight d7 has very good results, so this is maybe something to keep in mind. This is also an interesting move. Knight e4 was played. Knight e4, bishop d7, bishop c6, bc. So all of this was kind of forced for now. White castles. Black plays bishop c5, which is again the main move. Bishop e3. Now bishop b6. Well, there are other moves as well, but bishop b6 prepares c5 at some point. Now knight d2. So both sides are playing the main moves so far. c5, the white knight has to move, and it moves to f3, which is probably not the most accurate. Now black can have some advantage. After knight e2, this is quite important, as we will see the knight is safer on e2. Now if, for example, black can take, white takes back, and d4. At some point black wants to play d4. His main point is to open this light squared unopposed bishop and put it on c6. Then we will see if the knight was here, it could be a target to destroy the structure at some point. And something like this is quite normal. Black wants to put his pieces on light squares, and he shouldn't be in much trouble unless white gets f4, f5 in. Here black decided to play bishop g4, and this move is simply very sloppy, I would say, because here white has a pretty simple variation which he found, which gives him a big structural advantage, and also black has lost all dynamics. So as mentioned, it's important to understand what exactly is going on here, and what is going on is that black has a worse structure, but he has the bishop pair, and specifically he has the unopposed light squared bishop, so he should find a way to make use of this bishop and also keep the flexibility of his structure. As mentioned, he might want to play d4 at some point, maybe c4, c4, d4, and then d4 at some point. But he played bishop g4. Probably the best variation would be to take on d2 first, as this tension doesn't really favor black. This is important to understand. White is threatening to take here, because after black takes, these two will be completely isolated, and also the e4 pawn will very much block our very strong bishop. So this is something we don't want to happen, so we can get rid of this tension. White will recapture. Then we can either put the pawn on d4 already, or even make this small threat of taking here. Maybe not right now, but for example queen d7, and we have good development. At some point we will still play d4. Maybe we can put a pawn on c6, maybe even castle queenside at some point. I've seen this happen as well, and then attack on the king side, though that is of course a bit more risky. Black also has this plan at his disposal to weaken the light squares, and the game goes on. But it's important not to allow knight takes e4 as in the game. Here, of course, the spin looks logical, but white can just take and then exchange queens, move the knight, and now the position has changed. Now there are no queens on the board, which means, well, for one thing, black's bad structure will be a more important factor in the endgame, since now black will not have any dynamics to compensate. For example, he cannot attack the king, and now with this change, the structure has become even worse, because we cannot play d4 to block this bishop. This pawn will be a weakness for the whole game, and also our bishop is terrible. So now objectively black is kind of fine, but he will have to suffer quite a bit. So bishop f5 happened, have to defend the pawn somehow. Then h6. This looks like a bit of a strange move, unless we're trying to play king e7 and stopping this. But bishop g5 wasn't much of an issue anyway, since we can play f6. For example, if we play here, If he gives a check, we can just play f6. We are happy with opening the position a little bit and exchanging some pawns. At h6, knight c4, knight b3. Black exchanges rooks, plays c4, white goes back. Now, again, there is some tension here. It's unclear who this favors. Probably no one. White wouldn't really want to take here because it would improve black's structure. And if black takes here, that would kind of ruin white's structure. So probably it's good that black took. Then he played this c3 move, which is probably not the most accurate. Of course, the idea is there, but more accurate seems to be to defend the pawn, specifically by attacking this rook first. For example, when it moves, now we can defend, and the point is that this pawn is not very important because it will open this diagonal. For example, after king e7, now we see the point of moving the rook. Now if white wants this open file, he will have to use another move again, and if he doesn't, then we will put our rook here, maybe go here to take this pawn, or maybe go to the right side of the board, and black will have decent counterplay. The pawn advantage for white doesn't really mean much, and these pawns are quite difficult to attack. But this is quite specific. Here black played c3, also an option to give away the pawn to double white's pawns. Next he put his king on e7, which makes sense. And after knight b3, the game ends here, though I think it's clear white has some advantage. He has a pawn advantage, but more importantly, this bishop is not great. This rook is better than this rook. White can post up on d4, maybe bring his king somewhere, maybe even here, h3, g4 maybe, and the knight can also attack some stuff. But the game ended here, so somehow black misplayed it a little bit. He ruined his structure by playing bishop g4. Instead he has a very good game by taking here and playing d4 or bishop g4. In general, just pushing the pawn to d4 and then playing on the light squares, where he has the bishop and his opponent does not.